Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you?
Thank you very much.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi, Maryam.
How are you? I brought my husband with me to join us because you guys are so special.
That is a wonderful surprise. Thank you so much for joining us.
Alhamdulillah. Now, how do we do the Insta?
I'll start the live right
Zainab,
away.
I'm gonna start the Instagram live.
Yes, all right.
So I should connect.
Yes.
Let me get up. Give me a sec.
Okay.
It's not yet showing that you're live. Are you on yet? There we go.
We've gone live now.
You just requested. Yeah, I sent in a request, so you need to accept. Yep, there we go. It's accepting and it's coming. There we go. Can you see us? It's frozen on my end.
Okay. It's connecting. I think we can go ahead and then when it connects, it could just go ahead. Maybe you could just go ahead with the Zoom and then when it connects, we could just join with the Instagram.
I'll leave and try asking again.
Okay.
Yeah. One more time. Okay. I requested again. Sorry, I can't hear you. It's connecting. It freezes every time. So should we ignore the Instagram and start with the Zoom?
Yes, let's just start with this one for now.
Let me switch it off then. Okay, we're back.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Alhamdulillah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. So we are going to talk about pre-marriage. Before you say yes, that's the title of our talk. We watched your talk the other day that you had on her Iman, And I remember you saying how to be Mrs. Yes. And I was like, oh, we should have named that how to be Mrs. Yes. That would have been perfect. But thank you so much for joining us. And yes, please take the floor.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. It is such a pleasure to be on this platform. And like I said, because one of my daughters was one of those who invited me, I said I would give you a special treat and invite my husband to join me on this particular topic because it is so important, it's so relevant. But do you want to introduce yourself?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. For those of you that are not NHC alumni, my name is Saidu Suleiman Tao.
Alhamdulillah. Well, thank you for taking the time out to join me for this. Without any delay, we are going to dive into a discussion on the issue to do with the premarital stage. And I've got some notes so that I don't miss anything out. I think the before is the most important part of the whole wedding itself, the whole marriage and so on. If you don't get in with realistic expectations, if you don't go in doing your proper homework, sadly, a lot of marriages break down because they didn't do it right from the onset. But if you get it right, alhamdulillah, inshallah, there will be fewer surprises in for you. So the first thing to talk about is get married for the right reasons. I did a survey recently on Instagram and Facebook. Why do marriages break down? And a lot of people kept saying, because people got married for the wrong reasons. So some get married due to pressure, unfortunately, self-inflicted pressure in particular, that they've reached a certain age or their biological clock is ticking. Some others get married because they say, oh, all my friends are married or my siblings are married. But they are not their siblings, right?
No, no. And some get married because family friends, a father's friend, a mother's friend has a daughter or a son, and they feel the two of you will make a good match without ever consulting you. And one of the experiences I've had is because my father went through that and had challenges with being literally, I would say, forced to marry someone he wasn't interested in. He was particularly protective. So when friends would come or relatives would come, he would just casually tell them either he has somebody he has in mind, or it's just not yet time. And that's how he kept, I would say, about 5 to 6 interests were expressed in my particular case, where young ladies were just being brought over or parents were talking about it, and my father just said, no, 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 no. And one of the challenges we have, particularly in the North, is this tendency to say, oh, because we are friends, we grew up together, we got the same kind of culture, upbringing, our children will make a good match. Not necessarily so. And out of respect, because of how, again, we are raised in the North, where you have difficulty challenging the wishes of parents, because what's often said that if you upset your father or your mother, Allah, not you. That isn't exactly true when you are doing things based on what is right and you're protecting your own interest and well-being. Exactly. The life you're going to live with this partner is your life, not their life.
Exactly.
And this is where a lot of mistakes are made based on pressure, like Maryam started citing a few examples. But one of the most difficult ones to fight off are parents insisting that you marry someone they've selected for you. There's nothing wrong in matchmaking. In our case, that is what happened.
Yeah, your sister mentioned it.
Exactly. Yeah. And my sister sent me a picture of Maryam, I've known Maryam since I was in secondary school, as this little petulant, obnoxious girl. When I would come to the house asking to see her brother, and she would give me a look, and I'm like, my goodness, this girl has an attitude.
I was only 10 at the time.
Little did I know that many years down the road, we will become husband and wife. But that was when I first met Maryam. And then later in secondary school, my sister sent me a picture, and that was how it started. And when Maryam said for the right reasons, if you're introduced, alhamdulillah. If it's a good match, you start the discussions.
Yeah.
No commitment.
Yeah.
No commitment, just discussions. getting information, checking the value system of the person that has expressed interest in you.
Yeah.
You share the same values. You share the same aspirations.
Don't give away this. We're getting there.
Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yes. However, the point you made is, there are so many pressures from outside. And some get married because of wealth. Some get married because they want to have kids.
Yes.
They feel, of course, their biological clock is ticking. They're not getting any younger. And then some want shelter. And some don't want to commit zina, so they choose to get married for those reasons. One of the things I keep emphasizing is there is no race or competition when it comes to getting married. You have to get married when you are ready and for the right reasons. Because this is real life. Marriage can make or break you. If you don't do it right, unfortunately, it can be very tragic. Emotions get shattered, your self-esteem can be destroyed. And then if, God forbid, there are children who witness it, they become dysfunctional. So always make sure you get married for the right reasons. And then this issue to do with getting married for love is another one. Like for me, I know I was in love, and that was why I got married. In spite of the fact that, yes, a lot went into the behind the scenes before the marriage actually took place, alhamdulillah. However, we'll get to that part as well. Now, one thing that I know a lot of people say is, I'm getting married because it's half of my faith. Well, if it is half of your faith, how come you find there's infidelity in marriage? How come you find there's injustice? If it is literally half of your faith, how come you find people being abused in relationships? So what does it actually mean? You're not supposed to suffer in marriage. You're not supposed to sacrifice yourself in marriage. Allah doesn't want you to settle or manage when it comes to marriage. So when you wanted to say something. Yeah.
Yes. The point that you raised about being half of one's faith. A lot of misinterpretation, right? Fulfilling the rights and obligations of marriage is what basically is the target for fulfilling half of one's faith.
What do you mean?
Well, you just don't get married to fulfill half your faith.
And that's it, you fulfilled it. No, exactly. There's work.
There's work to be done. And the reason why I wanted to take a step back, it is among the questions or the inquiries you make as to how much your potential spouse truly understands how to go about fulfilling half of that faith.
Yeah.
During the courtship, the first thing I told Maryam in our discussion was to educate her on her rights and her responsibilities as a wife, and to also educate her about my rights and my responsibilities. The reason I did that is, if case I go wrong, I make a mistake, I miss something, Maryam would tactfully, respectfully, and whatever manner, draw my attention and correct me. Because when Maryam said it's major, if you do it right, it could be your way to Jannah. Yeah. If you do it wrong,
exactly,
and I'm talking about both husband and wife here, that could be very problematic for you.
Absolutely.
So having that knowledge, discussing those rights and responsibilities and duties is very crucial for both the male and the female, the groom and the bride, to be very, very knowledgeable. Why? Marriage, I am her garment, the sutura, she is mine. It's not just about Rufa Mata Asiri and so on. No, it's in making sure also I fulfill all those duties before Allah as I am supposed to, and she does likewise. So being knowledgeable is crucial in this issue.
Exactly.
And we will go more into it.
Absolutely. So now you want Mr. Right, or Miss Right. In this case, I think the house is filled with ladies. So you want Mr. Right, but are you right? Are you correct? Are you ready? Are you the right kind of spouse that will attract Mr. Right? That is so important. Are you truly ready to commit to a true relationship? Or are you so far gone in love that your mind and your heart are no longer open to seeing the flaws? Many of us pray for Allah to guide us in selecting the right spouse. However, they are so head over heels in love that they don't see the flaws, yet Allah is actually sending them those signals. So are you ready to trust Allah during this process. Now, what do you want? Now, this one is very funny because I get a lot of comments with regard to what people's expectations are of what Mr. Right should look like. I've heard everything. Now, let me share a few with you. Someone who's a bit religious, but not too much. Bit religious, but not too much. Another one is somebody tall, fair, with a bit of meat, but not too chubby. And then another one, for guys, I've heard somebody say somebody beautiful with long, soft hair, curvaceous and petite, not too big, I like petite. And then the one that I found so hilarious was somebody very handsome and loaded. However, because he's handsome, he shouldn't be so arrogant. So he shouldn't be finer than me. I mean, I just thought that was so funny. I remember a friend giving me a list of the qualities they wanted in a spouse to be. And when he brought this list, there were about 50 things he had jotted down. And I was going through this thing, puzzled, and I was like, wait a minute. You don't have half of this. And I know this person very, very well. I was like, you've not got even half of these qualities, and yet you're looking for that in a spouse. So before you come up with your wish list, there are things you need to do. You need to be the right person. You need to know yourself. You need to have some key qualities that inshallah will make you the right kind of spouse. And if you don't have those qualities, you need to get them. You need to learn them. Just like skills are learned, qualities are adopted and habits are developed. So all those things are things, if you are lacking them, you need to get that. Don't forget, Mr. Right is looking for Miss Right, right? He's not looking for Miss Wrong. So knowing yourself helps you and prevents you from attracting the wrong kind of guy, Mr. Wrong, in other words. Now, sometimes you find some people often keep, like they're a magnet to a certain type of person who ends up abusing them, doesn't treat them well, ignores them during the courtship period. And this keeps happening over and over again. You need to make sure that you know what you want. You have yourself in order. Otherwise, you're going to be a doormat. You're going to find yourself victim to that. Yeah.
Many of you have heard our stories. When the courtship began, when we were introduced, the first thing I did was to embark on a journey of self-discovery. There's nothing worse than being pretentious of who you really are, because it's only a matter of time when someone will point a finger in your face and tell you who you are. And before someone does that, you do it yourself. By doing it yourself, you are working on fixing that aspect of you that you know between you and Allah is problematic.
A weakness, yeah.
Are you self-centered? Are you selfish? Are you insensitive? Are you extravagant? Do you like showing off? All these things will become a problem in marriage. Are you even greedy with food? Do you have a problem sharing your food?
You can bring that one up.
Do you?
He says I'm stingy with food. I don't like sharing, and it's true. I don't.
Do you have these small problems that are minor irritations that can become major problems? Or do you have some really deep
unresolved issues,
character flaws?
Yeah.
Do you have issues of experiences that were bad that you've not been able to resolve? You've not been able to face head on?
Like abuse.
Like any kind of
rape,
abuse, rape.
Psychological issues.
Yeah, psychological issues.
Yeah.
You have to come to terms with those realities about yourself, whether male or female. Yeah. Don't go into a marriage without at least acknowledging them and accepting them, because that's the first step to overcoming them.
Yeah.
You resolve as much of them as you can. Some that you cannot resolve, you have your partner after the marriage, you let them know it's something they have to keep in the strictest of confidence and help you with. And here's a point I wanted to make. We often talk about abuse and we only focus on females being sexually abused or molested. Some men have had those experiences too. And it does affect relationships. It can make women resentful of men. And in some cases, it is women abusing the men So they have a particular attitude towards women in general, which should not be the case. So it's important, first and foremost, self-examination and being truthful to oneself and acknowledging why. Outside people say, well, nobody is perfect. And once you realize that in life, you don't have a problem coming to terms with your own shortcomings. But like Maryam said, before you go saying, here's my list, what is your list, both good
and negative?
Yeah. And what are you doing about accentuating that which is positive and trying to get over that which is negative?
Absolutely. So I would like you to ask yourself some key questions here. And I think based on what Said has just said, it is giving you a wake-up call to do your own introspect and get yourself in order. So if I were to ask you, would you want to be married to you the way you are? Somebody with exactly the same personality you have. So maybe you're somebody who is broody, who shuts down, who doesn't motivate, doesn't encourage. Do you know yourself so well, and are you okay if you saw a replica of your character, your personality in somebody else? If the answer is yes, alhamdulillah, and what my father normally says is improve upon it. However, if you know, yeah, I cannot live with somebody like me, then you have a lot of homework to do before you go and say, I'm ready to get married. So another question is, are you a pleasure to be around? Do you enjoy, is your company good? Do you uplift? Do you add value wherever you are? Are you encouraging? Are you positive? Or are you the kind of person who, when you enter a room, you suck the oxygen out? You know, those are important questions. Then, do you have empathy? Empathy is so important in the relationship, this emotional intelligence. And if you can do a bit of homework on it, maybe go on YouTube. It is such an important asset to have EQ. When you go into a relationship, having the sensitivity and compassion about what your partner may be going through. The people skills, in other words, people skills for your marriage. Our devices, we know each other's pins and access to each other's emails, and it just gives us peace of mind that there are no secrets, that we are an open book to one another.
There's a caution I want to give. That system you may come into your new married home with may be what has existed with your family.
Exactly. You're going to copy what you see.
And it may be okay with your family, but you're starting your own home with new rules and new guidelines. So you cannot say, this is okay in our home. You have to set, like Maryam would always talk about, your own code of conduct. You have to set your own rules and guidelines based on the two experiences that the husband and the wife are bringing together. And that would work well for you, that both of you would be comfortable with. But neither one of you should impose what is the norm in the homes you'll be in, into your new home, because this new home you're establishing is a partnership, and everybody has something to bring to the table to contribute. So be careful with old habits. That may be okay over there. That will not work here, because part of the problem that Maryam was explaining is she came from a background where you share everything. And I was like, yeah, when before you came, that's fine. Here, I don't want to share mine with anybody. I can share it with you. You can share yours with mine. And I'm not going to take yours and share it with my family members. Because why? It's none of their business.
It's true.
It concerns us.
Our business.
Unless there are issues of abuse, mistreatment, neglect, lack of compassion, lack of empathy, like Maryam is talking about, and you've tried and tried and tried to bring that to the fore and have it addressed, and your spouse is not cooperating, then of course you would seek assistance. And preferably, you go to the people that know your spouse. So you're not going to a stranger.
People that your spouse respects.
And more than likely, it's her family, or she goes to my family, but not to outsiders.
Exactly. So this issue to do with get yourself in order, have a sense of purpose and direction for yourself. There is this quote that says, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. And that is so true. If you don't have conviction and a sense of understanding, self-awareness, then it's easy to fall for whatever comes your way because you didn't have that, goal or target as to who you are and what kind of person you're looking for. So if you don't have yourself in order, it's easy to be taken for granted and easy to be turned into a doormat. So I ask you these questions because they are critical to the success of the marriage. If you don't know yourself or get married for the right reasons, unfortunately, it's a disaster waiting to happen. And we see so many marriages that aren't even lasting more than 3 months to 6 months. Saeed and I do a lot of counseling, and we find ourselves trying to rescue marriages in crisis. And you find it's like, okay, how many years have you been married? And you hear it's months. Why? There was so much more emphasis being put on the wedding and the bling bling event and everything than on the marriage itself. So you need to make sure you get that part right. Next, I want to ask you, what do you want? What can you live with and what can you live without? There is no way I can live with this, but this I definitely need. You need to have your list of the code of conduct, like this is a quality my spouse must have. Let me give you an example, like issues to do with prayers, the non-negotiables. Like I want to make sure I marry somebody who's God-conscious, God-fearing, who's very prayerful. That could be one quality that you say, it is a must. Somebody who has anger management issues, gets upset easily, blows up and says whatever comes. Definitely, I cannot handle someone who uses profanities or gets upset and loses control of self. Somebody who is stingy, somebody who gets mood swings. Like you guys are all laughing 1 minute and next thing you see they shut down. And you're like, what happened? You can't figure out what's going on. Maybe somebody who's smelly or dirty, because there are certain things you just can't live without. So you need to make sure you get that also in order. And now wish lists are extremely important, and these qualities are so important that you identify. However, make sure they are realistic. Make sure they're not too heavy, that person you're looking for doesn't actually exist. And don't forget, you yourself are not correct. You're not complete. You're not perfect. You have a lot of things that you need to work on and build on. The most important thing is don't find yourself settling. Don't find yourself just saying, okay, I will manage them as they are. So do not marry someone who seems like a potential to be your perfect husband one day. Don't go for someone who you believe after we get married, we will fix. Like you're already seeing things you don't like, and you say you're going to help them after the marriage. Yeah.
Can I go back a little?
Yeah.
Because you talked about something that I think we should have brought up at the beginning.
Yeah. When
you said someone who doesn't pray, that's non-negotiable. That is something that it's a no. And in prior discussions, we always say for both of you, it is always Allah first. Understanding your faith, learning about the rights and responsibilities of husbands and wives and so on and so forth. That's critical. Not being Allah, putting Allah first in everything. And second is your own spirituality.
Yeah. How
close, how knowledgeable are you about your faith and your ibadah, and how interested are you in learning about those things? Exactly. And that's critical because everything else we've talked about so far, that should be the foundation on which they are all built on.
Exactly.
It's Allah, knowledge of Allah, your spirituality, how educated are you about your own faith, and how educated are you about the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then all these other things will be built on that foundation.
Yeah.
So when we talk about value, when we talk about Aqidah, we're saying when you look at a potential spouse, whether male or female, gauge that first. How is their relationship with their maker? And how knowledgeable are they about the faith? And of course also of the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of which he was the walking Quran. So these are critical when you are decided. Then we come to these worldly things and we follow one by one, but to make sure it is built first and foremost on that foundation.
Yeah. So this point he's making about, making sure, again, it goes back to that you are right, and you are right starting with Allah first, that you have this moral compass, because it also gives you that barakah of Allah, because he says if you are conscious of him, he will provide for you from sources you never expected. So really having him as your guide in your selection process, in your own personal development, your jihad bin nafs, your evolution is so critical. So yes, I absolutely agree, and I'm glad you pointed that out. So again, back to what I was saying, never marry someone who you think will get better. I can tell you, I can't even count how many times I speak to a lady who says, my spouse is not regular with his prayer. I have to wake him up to pray, and sometimes he tells me to just leave him, and things like that. These are all the things you needed to have done before the marriage. It's so important. So your spouse-to-be is not a science experiment that after you get married, you will add a few ingredients to them and upgrade them to the standard you're looking for. That person does not exist. If you feel this person will be better, trust me, what you are seeing is exactly what you're going to get, if not worse, because people put their best foot forward during courtship. We all wear masks. And unfortunately, after you get married, that's when reality hits and you realize this isn't as I had hoped. So you need to really have your eyes wide open during that courtship period. Because if they don't change, what are you going to do? You know, that's the biggest problem.
I saw questions, many asking, how do you know that person is Mr. Right?
Yeah.
When Maryam said, you be right,
yeah.
I want to assure you, if you are knowledgeable and you have a close, solid relationship with your maker, and everybody knows you to be spiritually serious, you won't attract the riffraffs. I'm sorry to say.
Exactly.
You won't attract them because they will be intimidated by your character, by your strength, and your resolve with regard to your ibadah and your iman.
Yeah.
So that in itself will serve as a shield to, you know, kind of resistance to those who are not serious. And people know, I can't handle that.
Yeah.
And if you're not like that, if you can't meet up to your standards, they will keep away.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of important thing to have, because it will serve in just kind of removing or filtering out those that you don't want to waste your time even talking to.
Yeah.
And to remember when Maryam said about paying too much attention about the superficial aspect of weddings, we're highly distracted in all the conversations with all the issues you've raised, all the questions you've asked. Don't be in a hurry to impress anybody by your wedding photographs, by the kind of reception, what is you're going to wear, which glamour magazine you have taken pictures, and so on and so forth. That isn't what builds a marriage. That whole series of events doesn't last more than 2 weeks, it's over. Then reality, real life begins. And we hurt our children because apparently in many of these weddings, it's not about the son and the daughter. It's about us.
The parents.
It's about us showcasing how rich, how sophisticated, how enlightened.
It's not about
you. It's not about you.
Yeah.
And you have to fight to make sure that that nikah, that whole arrangement, that whole wedding is about you. And what is important? Is it the gathering? Is it who and who's that came? Is it how many receptions you had? How many times you changed your outfit? All of that, I'm sorry to say, means absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Zero. It does not build a happy home.
Absolutely.
Once the crowd dissipates, everybody's gone, the music stops, reality hits, and you got distracted.
Our reality hit 2 weeks into the marriage. Many of you have heard me share that. Like, by the time you look back at the wedding pictures, you're like, good Lord, why did I put so much energy into that when there was something else I needed to focus my attention on?
Absolutely.
Now, when you have looked out for the warning signs and you see things that you cannot live with, whether it's temper, whether it's mood swings, whether it's the spirituality factor, whatever it is that deep inside you're like, based on my qualities that I'm looking for in a spouse, this person doesn't have this. You need to make sure that you know it's never too late to call it off. I promise you, even if it's a week to the wedding, because it's not about them, it's about you. It's about forever after, forever misery. It's about being broken. Like I said, there are so many things that come from a broken marriage, a relationship that is toxic, that you need to avoid. So remember, it's never too late until the nikah is done. And once you do that nikah, mentally tell yourself, I'm in this for life. There are a few reasons why you would get out. And during Q&A, I know some of the questions you guys sent ahead of time had some. Inshallah, we will address that. So the temporary embarrassment to the family, trust me, it's better that than a lifetime of scars and misery that you will suffer. So always remember, it's not about them. Marry this person you are courting as they are, with the potential for mutual growth. At that time, you can come up with your 50 or 100 quality wish list that you want to work on. Then just a word of advice. If you're yet to find somebody, you're not yet courting, I ask you, please don't put your life on hold waiting for Mr. Right to come along. You're worth so much more. Continue to live, continue to grow, continue to work on yourself and build yourself. But don't say, when I get married, I will do this. Or because I know a lot of people will say, that's what I'm looking for. Now, just a disclaimer. It's not compulsory to get married. It's highly encouraged in Islam. However, it's not compulsory. But once you choose to get married, your obligations to your spouse are compulsory. You have rights, however, they also have rights, and each of you have to fulfill each other's rights and obligations. Why? Because Allah will ask you. You called him to witness your union. And if you do not fulfill those obligations, Allah will ask you. We hear the word marriage is ibadah. It sounds so cliche. Many people say that.
Yeah, but it's misconstrued.
Exactly.
And that phrase is wrong. It is fulfilling the obligations and duties of marriage according to the guidelines in the Quran and Sunnah, is fulfilling half your ibadah. Exactly. So just say getting married, fulfilling half my, no, it's sitting at home doing nothing. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. No. You're just getting yourself deeper and deeper into trouble. Yeah. Because when you aggregate all your acts of ibadah, everything from prayer, or if you're a revert, from coming to shahada, to the psalm, to zakat, to hajj, all of that, and all the other acts of charity, neighbors, relatives, and so on and so forth, is half.
Yeah.
And fulfilling the rights and responsibilities, that's just one half. But fulfilling the rights and responsibilities of marriage is the other half. You cannot do that without knowledge.
Exactly.
And ignorance, as we all know in Islam,
is not an excuse.
Yeah,
because you know the details of how you're supposed to pray. You know what you need to do during Ramadan and how to fast and all those little tiny. If you're going for Hajj, you read books, you prepare, you go for tafsirs on how to perform Hajj. Imagine all those things constitute half. Now, when it comes to marriage, you find people put more energy into passing exams than into this thing that can it's half of their faith. So that emphasis is so important. Do your homework. Know what you're getting into. Ignorance is not an excuse. Yes. And then, let me see, what have we not covered? Because our time is running out. If you want a happy marriage, if you want peace and tranquility, you need to go into marriage with the right attitude and the right mindset. Number one, you're not meant to be a glorified housemaid. It is not compulsory in any way for you to cook and clean for your spouse. Under Sharia, your spouse is meant to provide you with someone who would do that, and you can supervise them, or they do it themselves. But you find, yes, some people go into marriage with that house pride, you know, like I look forward to taking care of my home, I look forward to cooking. Alhamdulillah, that's a great attitude to have. But like my husband said to me, whenever I chose to go into the kitchen to cook, he said, Maryam, make intention for sadaqah.
Sadaqah to me.
To him, yes, make intention that you're doing a sadaqah. It's that important, you know, it's not compulsory. So these are all things you need to discuss ahead of time. And then we will go into the actual courtship, what you should do and not do. But it's so important. During the marriage, you treat each other with dignity, and inshallah, you will get it back. Don't let anyone tell you that if you play with your spouse and so on, it's tura, it's, you know, baturi kind of behavior and so on. If the Prophet ﷺ did it, inshallah, you're good, and it will strengthen and make your relationship better.
One key quality
that
I want you to discuss, whether you're the groom looking for a bride or the bride looking for a groom, is your potential partner to have a sense of curiosity and to have the humility to be willing to learn from you.
Yeah.
So it's not about the man always being the one who's in charge, who knows everything, who you shouldn't argue with. The woman also can be more intelligent in certain aspects of life. And there's nothing wrong in learning, as long as you both respect each other's confidentiality. You don't teach your husband and go around telling the world, oh, he's ignorant about that. He doesn't know how to use a knife and fork and so on. I had to teach him even the napkins and so on. No, please, that's between the two of you. I remember one particular case when there was a problem between a husband and wife, and she went to her parents and went and told the parents that, oh, my husband isn't deep in the Quran, he's not that knowledgeable about the religion, and so on and so on and so forth. I'm like, ouch. No, that's not something you go broadcasting. It's something you help each other grow, and to have a self-deprecating attitude. Yeah. I can laugh about myself, no problem, and she can laugh about herself. I don't make fun of her, but I want to tell you, nobody makes as much fun of me than this woman here. You know, every opportunity she gets, she makes fun. And you know what?
But not in a bad way. Please let them know it's not in a bad way.
Alhamdulillah, I can laugh about it. But it's something that you need to make sure is okay, because life is difficult as it is. You need some sense of humor to help release the pressures of the challenges outside.
Yeah.
And I'm her source of comfort, and she's my source of comfort. And a little laughter doesn't hurt. You know, when they tell you your stomach is like your GPS, wherever it goes, that's where you go. Actually, she went like this. So your stomach.
Who said that?
I get a little weight. I was a little fat, and Maryam just said, you know, your stomach is like GPS. Wherever it goes, that's where you go. I'm like, oh my God. Nuru was there, her brother. My brother was there. They both just nearly fell over the chair laughing. But you know what? It's okay.
If they don't tell people it's public,
okay.
You just finished saying that.
It's okay to have a sense of humor about life and laugh about
Guys, don't do as I do.
It's a subtle warning. I got my act together and I started working on losing weight. She wanted a nice way to tell me I was fat.
No,
and
it's not that you were fat. Okay. You had a 1-pack instead of a 6-pack. That was the problem.
Now tell me if that is better. Did she just make it worse or what? Anyway,
guys, don't do as I do.
Okay,
back to business. You know what? We've not got much time. So now we go into, I can't believe you told us. Now we go into things to talk about during courtship. So, sorry, I just remembered something while Said was speaking. Your husband is the head of the household, and he's like the shepherd, and the rest of you are the flock. That's why it's so important you marry someone whom you respect, whom you look up to, who is intelligent, knowledgeable, because you want them to guide you. Said uplifted me. I got married at 18. I was very stupid. I was an airhead. I was very selfish. And there were things my parents should have corrected me, some of my habits before I got married, but it's like it just, flew under the radar till I got married and everything gets in the spotlight. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're now told you talk too much. You're very selfish. You think only about yourself and your happiness. And you're like, where did that come from? But slowly he raised me up. He was into politics. He was into world, in broad general knowledge. So the books he was reading, he would give me to read. At first, I hated to read them. And he realized the best thing to do, since I hated to read, is let him read to me. In the early stages, I used to even close my ears like I didn't want to learn. Later, he started, I started to begin to feel it. And I realized it's so important. I come up to his level. He gives me 12 years. So he's turning 60 this year, inshallah.
Thank you for that.
I have to jab him again. But what I really appreciate and why I respect him so much is how he taught me about my rights and he lived it. He made sure that it was brought to life. It's not a textbook, the hadith that we're supposed to read or the Quran that serves as a textbook just to pass an exam, but that it's brought to life. Like just as Rasulullah was a walking Quran, we're meant to model him in being the walking Quran ourselves. So for me, I love that, alhamdulillah, I had somebody who was going to guide me and I was eager to follow. And still, wherever he goes today, I will go with him because we're both on the same page. And I respect him and I trust him to take me to the right destination, inshallah. I just wanted to emphasize that. So now let's say you have found the somebody, Mr. Right, inshallah. What do you talk about during courtship? Number one, you share expectations. What are your thoughts and expectations of marriage? Then you open your eyes wide to things that could be alarm bells, warning signs from Allah, because you pray to Allah to guide you in selecting the right spouse. Open your eyes. Don't be so blinded with love. Watch out for mood swings. Comment about concerns. If you see anger management issues or the way they relate with other people, what's their attitude to their family, their siblings, or maybe their workers, if they are, a boss to somebody. Are they someone who's very jealous and very possessive? Are they controlling or bossy? Raise those issues, your concerns, and address them till you are satisfied. Don't move forward. Press pause at that point till you know this issue has been addressed and you are satisfied with it.
About jealousy.
Yeah.
The one area where I would say be jealous is you guard your marriage jealously.
Yeah.
You protect your marriage. And some questions were raised about in-laws and so on and so forth. And many scholars tend to refer to, I'll say a verse in Surah An-Nisa where the man is Qawamun, where the man is the head, he's in the lead, and so on and so forth. And another aspect being quoted by scholars has to do with Rasulullah being asked about we being bowing before one another. And Rasulullah said, if I were to ask anybody to bow before anybody, I would say the wife is to bow before the husband. But those two areas, those two issues, the hadith and that quote in the Quran, has given some men the right to say we are the lead, women shouldn't argue, they should do exactly what we say, and so on and so forth.
They're like slaves to us.
Exactly. So, but when protection, the Qawamun is about the man protecting his wife, his family, uplifting them, raising them as high as they possibly can to be partners. But when some interpretations are done that way, it is basically to lower the status of women in marriage and raise the status of men. There's nothing wrong during courtship to raise this issue with your potential spouse and say, how do you understand this? Because it matters. Why? It's not just you being mistreated, but if you go along with that interpretation, which is unfortunately very prevalent in the African setting, is you're raising sons and daughters to also follow in suit. So when everybody starts doing things wrong, it started with you. There's a domino effect, and the implications are dire when you go before Allah, because you need to make sure, based on the guidelines in the Quran, the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are knowledgeable enough to want to avoid those minefields. Because when you have children and they go wrong, you are also going to get the percentage of that zunubi that you, whether inadvertently or directly, contributed to. So knowledge is very important. Discussions are very important. When everything we're talking about here is, we courted for 3 years. A lot of discussions, a lot of letters, a lot of questions, a lot of advice, and so on and so forth, to make sure I am the right person for her and she's the right person for me. In spite of that, when I came and I saw mine the first time, I was investigated. Her father had about 5 people investigate me, my personality, my attitude, my character. Do I smoke? Do I drink? Am I rude to parents? How do I talk to people? Do I wear jewelry? And so on and so forth. So it's not just love at first sight. He's good looking, oh, he's cool, he's sophisticated. Those things have to be done. Then you embark on istihara again, which I'm sure we'll talk some more later. I'm getting ahead of myself because there are questions you're asking. The points come and I want to quickly address them.
Absolutely. And the thing is, the disturbance that some people will take some verses out of context and now quote, because you are not knowledgeable enough, which is why what Said said earlier about know your faith, know your religion, understand this thing very well before you go into it, so nobody will take advantage of you and just quote verses out of context that suit their needs.
Yeah.
So yes, like I mentioned, somebody who's controlling or bossy, address it. Then raise issues about kids. How many kids do you want to have? Like he came from a family where he's the first of 26 children.
Yeah.
And I definitely was not into children like that.
But here's the, in our discussion, she asked me how many kids did I want. I honestly said I didn't want more than 3.
Yeah.
Maryam said she wanted 5. And I was like, oh.
And I was just joking. I didn't mean it.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't like children.
Allah blessed us with 2. We didn't plan to have 2. We wanted more. But she had challenges health-wise, and I sat Maryam down and I said, you know, if Allah in His mercy sees you safely to deliver in this second child, I think we should be grateful to Allah and stop there, because the second pregnancy was extremely complicated and it had a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, Turani. No, this was a deliberate decision, and I was the one who raised it. But up until about, 5 or 10 years ago, people kept asking us, because we have 2 boys, when am I going to get my mother? When am I going to get? I'm like, this is some game where I'm having kids and I'm naming them after people simply because you're alive. I want to
an ego thing.
No.
And I just want to, because it's not part of what I was going to talk about, but like my husband and I, we waited till our 6th year of marriage before we had our children, alhamdulillah. But we planned that. Like we discussed it during courtship, that we were not going to bring kids until we were truly ready. And about 3 years, about 3 years into the marriage, he felt he had already dealt with his issues, resolved, and felt he was ready to be a father. But I wasn't ready, and we were still having terrible fights. I didn't want to bring children we didn't want to bring children into a world where there was no love, there was no compassion, and that we won't be able to model what they should copy. So I emphasize that. But it's a personal thing. Just don't give in to pressure. Don't do it for them. When you are dealing with kids whom you weren't ready to be a parent to, wallahi tallahi, it's a nightmare, because children are another monster in themselves. It's a big job, and parenting is for life.
It takes 15 to 20 years
to
when
really
everything goes out of hand. And you realize you
messed up.
Right.
Exactly. So talk about kids, talk about discipline, how you plan to discipline the children, the care for the children. I was fortunate. He was a very hands-on parent, and he wanted to be involved in everything. So he changed the diapers. I would express milk, and he would give the children milk, and using the bottle, and did practically so much, and allowed me to rest so that he would take the kids so that I get to sleep, because you know how when you have young kids, they keep you up at all sorts of hours. So alhamdulillah, those were things we discussed beforehand, and he was able to actually do it. Then talk about how you plan to fight conflict resolution, and do your homework about effective communication beforehand. Learn it, take courses, go on YouTube, study, so you find various methods that hopefully you can discuss during courtship and agree. If you are angry, how do you want me to react? And if I'm angry, this is what I want from you, so that ahead of time.
An effective apology. Okay.
And learn to make an effective apology.
You're angry. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Burrito.
That's
Yes.
Not an apology.
That's not. Yeah. Yeah. Burrito. Like. I know.
You.
Then this one is sensitive. Come clean. What do I mean by come clean? Try not to have secrets. I got a letter just yesterday, an email that someone sent me, where she's courting this person who is a wonderful guy, and they've been courting for a while. Now, during the courtship, he asked if she was a virgin, and she told him yes, she was. Unfortunately, she's feeling guilty that the marriage date is getting closer, and she has not come clean, and she wants Allah's barakah in this. The fear she has now is if she tells him, she may lose him. And what's the dilemma? What do you do now? This issue is such a sensitive one, and I know we discussed it last night with Saeed. What were your thoughts on that?
First and foremost is the realization that Allah is Ghafur Rahim. Is the most forgiving, the most merciful. If this young lady has realized her mistakes and has gone before Allah and repented and sought Allah's forgiveness, inshallah, Allah in His mercy will forgive her. Fornication is not an offense to the person, it's a sin between the person and Allah. So if you have come clean with Allah, the approach to this person is to say, I made a mistake out of fear and concern that I could lose you. and I couldn't muster the courage to tell you the truth. But I did make a mistake between me and Allah, and I've gone before Allah to admit my sin and to seek Allah's forgiveness. And I'm asking you now to forgive me for lying, because now I have to go back to Allah again and seek Allah's forgiveness for lying to you. So rather than just tell you the truth without any problems, I now have two problems on my hand. One, I lied, which is a sin before Allah. And two, I lied to you, which now I'm trying to come clean and asking you to forgive me. So when you are sincere in these areas, in how you deal with mistakes and errors in life, we're human, nobody is perfect. And Allah has said so many times that come to me, seek my forgiveness. I made a mistake. Life is a trial. And in that particular instance, someone failed, but they've gone before Allah to make amends. That's the approach. So don't lie. You've made a mistake. You've made a mistake. You've gone before Allah to seek forgiveness. You are very hopeful. You are almost certain that Allah in His mercy has forgiven you. And then you make that clean with the person.
So this issue of coming clean, just try and make sure you have as few as possible skeletons in your closet. This issue to do with rape and sexual abuse are a reality. And unfortunately, these things manifest themselves in the relationship if you do not deal with excess baggage. So these are issues that you do need to try, once you reach the stage where you see this relationship is going somewhere, try and come clean and let the person know you're telling them this thing as an amana, and you pray they do not divulge it if the relationship doesn't work out. But it's a tough one.
Someone asked a question. And what Allah has cautioned us about is don't go committing sin and announcing it to the world. Don't do that. But in the case of a potential spouse asking you a question that's sensitive, and you lie, and God forbid, on the first time you have your sunnah, he discovers you're not a virgin. So what happens to the marriage?
It started on life.
I'm not saying go and broadcast to the world that you are not a virgin. No, I'm saying if a potential spouse that you're in love with has asked you that question, be straightforward. But what Allah does not want is for you to commit a sin and then you brag about it. The punishment Allah said that will be meted out to you will be worse than someone who committed the sin and kept quiet and kept it secret. So that's the reason. And that particular one is sensitive because a man, some could tell. So let's be careful what we use in covering what. In the marriage, you try your best. And again, this world, the way it is. You don't know if the person you committed that act one day will be the one to say in an area where the man doesn't even know your husband is sitting. So rather than him finding out one way or the other, it's best he hears it from you. And you pray that he would hold that in the strictest of confidence. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Then this one, which is always a sensitive one, is polygamy. Talk about this beforehand. I had a friend in high school who said, she wants to be like a second or third wife from the onset. That's fine. It's a personal choice and it's subjective to the individual. There's no written rule that you must go into polygamy. It's a choice as to what you can live with. That's why there is a clause where you can ask your spouse and have an agreement, either a written contract or a verbal contract that they are not going to go into polygamy. But like I say, it's a personal thing. It's truly subjective to you. Somebody had asked, what are the benefits of it? Well, the benefit is if it's something you definitely know you cannot live with, then the benefit is it protects you, so that if your spouse does go ahead and do it after promising they wouldn't or signing to the fact that they won't, you can go to Sharia court judge and you can ask for a divorce based on that ground. So that is it. But it's, as I said, it's a personal thing. There is nothing wrong with it as long as going into it, make sure you marry a man who understands the responsibility of being in polygamy. That yes, you can marry 2, 3, or 4, but marry only one if you can't be fair or just. If you can't be just. So that just make sure your husband understands that and will separate you and be fair and just to all of you. That is the most important thing. something. So this thing, like I said, of knowledge of your rights is so important, and ignorance is not an excuse. Money causes a lot of fights. So I'm wrapping up now, so that's why I'm going to rush through the list. Talk about money, talk about finances, how you plan to share. Part of the responsibilities of a husband in Islam to his wife is to give her an allowance. And you can agree on a monthly or a quarterly allowance, whatever works with you, that's reasonable, that they can afford. But your spouse, and that money is yours. And what's yours is yours. What's his is for both of you.
And that money has nothing to do with the upkeep of the house.
Nothing to do with buying food for the house or things for others. It's yours. Yes. And then talk about if your spouse is going to be okay with you working, because some people want to go into or are in a professional field before the marriage. Is your spouse okay with you continuing that thing you do? I know for many women who are bankers, normally you find a lot of married men, once they get married, say, I don't like that lifestyle. I don't want you to do that. And you need to discuss these things ahead of time. Then furthering your education, that's another thing where sometimes you find the spouse moves the goalposts. They know beforehand that you wanted to go far with your studies.
Among the rights of the wife on the husband, which is a duty of the husband towards the wife, is educating her. Educating her. So she comes out of home without a degree or anything like that. You have to, as best as you can, give her that education. It's her right and it's your responsibility. So it's important that we recognize that.
Yes, and then talk about in-laws and boundaries. Your in-laws have no rights over you whatsoever. You don't owe them anything, but you need to discuss and see how is his relationship with his parents and his family. I know a lady who married this man, and he's the youngest of 7, and the 6 were girls, and he was the only guy. At 11 o'clock, they would call him, go and buy me suya, and he would leave his house. You know, his marriage, he leave his wife at that hour. It went so wrong that eventually, after several years, she had to get a divorce. And so just understand, they have no rights over you. They cannot just tell you, cook for us. Normally they will say matamu and things like that. Be careful where that takes you. So discuss and understand and set boundaries. But like today, our in-laws don't just barge in without letting us know they are coming. My brother doesn't just barge into the house, and neither does his family. Like, everybody is aware, and so we are prepared. But it's so important. He set the boundaries ahead of time before the marriage, and everybody just respected that. So it's important you address it. And then have a sense of humor. As you can see, Said and I, we joke a lot, we laugh a lot. Sometimes we just look at each other and we know exactly what has come into our mind, and we just burst into laughter. Sometimes we could be at opposite ends of the room, and we just find something humorous, either a facial expression or something, and we get it and we start to laugh. Humor is important, because I was dealing with a case recently where this lady said, I love to laugh, I love jokes, I love to watch comedy. My spouse doesn't like anything like that. He's so serious, everything is just, business and so on. These are the things you need to deal with beforehand. Once you are married, it's too late. It's hard to just suddenly teach somebody to start.
You can't change that.
Yeah. So please make sure whatever is important to you. If you are okay being serious and you want business, go ahead, if that's what makes you happy. But the most important thing is talk about everything. Marriages fall apart because these things were not done right. And then ask a trusted friend. Like Said said, my family investigated him thoroughly and embarked on istikhara as well. So you need to tell your loved ones, people who genuinely care for you, to also help you in the prayer, your family, your loved ones in istikhara. Istikhara is so critical.
The reason why this is so important, things go really haywire after 20, 25, 30 years and becomes nasty. And people do not give, they are known. Only God knows. Only Allah knows. And the importance of istikhara is you ask Allah to guide you, make a decision. If this union will be best for Maryam and myself, will be best for our families, and ultimately will be good for the ummah. So this is a long-term commitment with children that inshallah will also become assets to society, will help in developing humanity. So marriages are not that casual. It's not about the superficiality, the parties, the pictures, and so on and so forth. Someone asked a very good question, right, about these virgin girls going and having surgeries. Let me say this give you this caution. When you get married, you want it done so that Allah blesses it, so Allah's barakah is in it. Do it right. Don't deceive. That's not the objective.
Yeah.
Even if your spouse doesn't know, Allah knows what she's got.
Don't start your marriage with any...
On the wrong foundation?
Yeah. Don't
SubhanAllah. No, it's not
you
about
want
that.
His blessings throughout.
You want Allah's blessings throughout.
Yeah.
So please be mindful of that.
Yeah. So like I said, ask trusted friends, ask them to help you with dua. You do the istihara yourself and then read. Do your homework, go online, do research on marriage, effective communication, conflict resolution. Talk to people whose marriages are looking so good. Ask them what are their best practices and what caution would they give you. And then ask those maybe who have gone through divorce, what did they do wrong? So you avoid the pitfalls.
What would they do different?
And what would they do
If they had a
differently?
chance.
Exactly. And don't do istihara if you've already made up your mind. Now, courting the halal way. For me, I'm old school. My parents made sure that whenever he was coming to visit me, we sat in the living room and people could just walk around. Most important thing is don't allow shaitan to be the third in the room. Don't ever be alone, just the two of you, because love makes you completely blind and love can make you do stupid things because you think guaranteed this is it and then sometimes it turns out not to be. But preserve your dignity, at least have that. And then be careful with the kind of pictures you take before marriage. Again, if things don't work out, you never know how things will be. And then don't commit zina of the tongue, don't commit zina of the eyes and what you touch and the hand. The reason, what I mean by that is sometimes the things you say, you are very seductive. You don't need to strip, but you can create certain images in somebody's mind based on what you say you will do to them, for instance. So be very careful, make sure Allah puts His stamp of approval in the whole courtship process. And then no tasting, no testing, no looking, no touching to see how it feels. You know what I mean? Then pre-wedding pictures, like I mentioned, try and make sure there's no physical contact. Yes, you can take picture together and you're sitting side by side, but don't touch. He's standing above you or you're standing above, don't touch. Again, you want Allah's stamp. I know I sound like a fanatic and that people will say this is not right. Pre-wedding receptions as well, where the nikah has not been done and you're having a reception where you're told by the MC to come and dance. It is not right. And we are losing our values. We're losing our religion when we adopt these cultures from the West or from other places where people aren't really practicing Islam like this. This is un-Islamic. So I beg you, if you're gonna have dances, make sure you're already married. But do that thing privately. I don't know, me, I just find it.
We don't dance. I think we never danced probably.
Yeah.
But that's something that I think generation of people think is okay. This was important. When we got married, none of these things.
And I'm hearing a sound in the system. I'm not sure. The administrator, we're hearing a sound. Anyway, final words, I think Saeed has covered pretty much everything. Just make sure that the kind of energy and passion you put into the wedding, you put that energy into the premarital that we've talked about. Do your homework, do your research, understand yourself, understand the person you want to marry. Pray upon pray upon pray. Do sadaqah, fast. This is that important. You don't want to get it wrong. And may Allah guide you in making the best decisions that will be good for you, like he said, for your spouse, for your children, and the the ummah at large, inshallah. So yeah.
The question that came in the questionnaire that was filled out that appeared on the screen right now is, what if the gentleman you're interested in is good in character?
Yeah.
A strong deen, but you don't feel anything towards that person?
That's a great question. Saeed and I came across a similar question in your the comments that you were asked to fill out, the survey. So yesterday we were going through it, and that came up where I even have it here as one of the things to talk about. So I don't know if the administrator wants me to start going through some of the questions asked, and then we go and address the ones already in the house. Could you let me know what we do? Because I jotted down some things I think we should talk about.
Yes,
Maryam. I think you should just go through the questions you have. Then after that, we can address the questions people are sending here.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'll come to the questions that you just mentioned because it came up before, but here we go. How do you know if the person you are courting is genuine? How do you know if they are the right person? I think obviously you feel right, number one. That's why I say when you know you are right and you have that criteria, you feel right. Everything just seems in order, in balance. And when you do your istihara, Allah makes you feel even righter, if that's a word. Like you feel things seem aligned, things seem balanced, and it's a feeling. And inshallah, your feeling will be the right feeling. I think that's what I would say.
I just want to quickly add, for those of us who have both parents still alive, to make sure they are involved in praying for you, whether male or female, that you get the right spouse. And the dua of a parent never goes unanswered, as we've been told so many times. And to get them involved and say, help me find the right person, that dua, as they continue to pray for you, inshallah, with everything Maryam and I have told you, with the istihara, with the inquiries, you have to do a check. You have to check the background. Don't believe people coming in, because why? There are situations where people actually borrow even clothing, even shoes, not to mention cars, to come to your court to talk to you and so on and so forth. It's gotten that bad, that someone isn't pretending to be something they are not, simply because they see you as an opportunity for them moving socially up. So it's important. And how does the person communicate with you? What do they tell you? From the moment our courtship began, I told Maryam what my flaws are that I needed to work on. Once you get married, if you have secrets, everything blows up. It comes out in the open. So why not be honest right up front and see if the person still, in spite of everything you've told them, wants to go ahead? There's nothing wrong in that, because ultimately we're all looking for peace and harmony. That's it. At the end of the day, that's it. Peace and harmony for the man, for the woman. You start with falsehood, with deceit. Rest assured, there's no barakah in that wedding, in that marriage, and problems will emerge.
Exactly. Another question that was asked is, what are the key qualities to possess when searching for a spouse? So this is a very, very important question, and part of what we say you need to work on and build on. Now, actually, I'm doing a masterclass for singles. You'll get a certificate of completion, because at least my mind is at peace that we have shared our best practices with you, given you the very best advice, brought in the religious perspective on it, inshallah. So look out for that. It'll be coming soon. And so it is joining me in part of those modules. But in it, part of the things I talk about is things to do with, when you say what qualities, is things to do with emotional intelligence, having patience to see the results of your hard work. There is patience where you are just getting married, they will say, yeah, and so on, and not that kind. But like you are putting in, and you see your spouse also making an effort, and you are patient to see the results of the outcome.
You give yourself time to, because we are changing.
We're
trying
evolving.
to evolve.
Exactly.
And it takes time to get rid of old habits and pick up new ones.
Yeah.
So I can't just say, Maryam, change it right away. I want it yesterday.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that kept causing our fights, is I was just forcing so much into Maryam, and I wasn't going to be exactly that good right away. And one time she just said, you're setting the standards, they're so high, but you're not giving me time. And I had to come to terms with that, and I had to develop that patience.
Yeah. Then another important thing is having a growth mindset. You have some people who have a fixed mindset. This is who I am. You have to accept me as I am. But somebody with a growth mindset is going to evolve.
Absolutely.
So that's another important one.
Absolutely.
And then also having a team spirit, because there's no I in marriage. It's us. We. Those are the words you need to use. So being able to think of the big picture of the marriage itself. Financial discipline, because like I said, money causes a lot of problems. So you need to be very conscious of, you know, spending the right way. Even if your spouse is thinking rich, it doesn't matter. You need to have that discipline. Humility is extremely important in marriage. Learn to be humble. Don't brag because you come from an affluent home. You want to show off. You've got. I know somebody who the spouse is the one who's the wife is the wealthy one, whereas he is a struggling person. And alhamdulillah, that's how she married him and so on. But you find so much humility in how she is conducting the affairs in the home, not showing that she's, I'm the one paying for this, so this and that. Honesty and truthfulness, discretion. There are so many, and inshallah they will be on that platform where you will be able to find them. So one of the biggest killers of a relationship is ego, because it clouds. Yes,
pride and ego.
Exactly. And then one of the important skills to develop is communication, effective communication, which includes conflict resolution, gives you the ability to express your wants, your needs, your fantasies. Some of us are shy to say, could you do this in the bedroom, and so on. Effective communication helps you know how to do it properly and effectively.
That starts during courtship. Don't look for effective communication after the marriage.
Exactly.
That's a big
Make sure
mistake.
you are in sync beforehand.
Right off the bat, you have that. It's very, very critical. Someone talked about changing names, last names. In Islam, it is not an obligation. In fact, it's not encouraged.
Yeah.
When I married her, she kept her name. And if you go through history, Islamic history, from the daughters of Rasulullah to Umar bin Khattab and so on that married different Sahaba, each one was bint. You don't change the name. That's a Western concept. And it started when women were considered properties like cattle to men who married them. So it's a stamp of my name. She changes her name to mine because I own her. Not in Islam. It's a Western thing. Someone argued with me that, you know what, it provides protection, recognition, and so on. No, Islam does not encourage women changing their names. It may be necessary if it's a custom and it has implications in that community, like in the West. If you don't have that, they won't consider you married. So that's different. But in Nigeria here, that's not a problem. So you keeping your name is absolutely
your choice.
Yeah.
Then somebody talked about what tools can we use to identify or understand ourselves better and be more self-aware. It's good to take personality tests, and there is this 16personalities.org and DISC, D-I-S-C, DISC profile. If you go on Google, just look for it. The DISC, there is the free test. However, there's the one you pay about, I think, $40 for. It is an excellent test. It really helps you know your strengths, your areas for improvement, and gives you guidelines on how to work on it. So try and take those two. It helps. And then feedback is important, because people who know you will be able to say, these are some of your habits. Maybe you can work on this or improve upon that. What do I stand? Okay, I've covered that one. Gain from polygamy. How do I know if a suitor is right? Like, I think we've covered that. How do you keep love going?
Before we get to that, someone said, how do you test a person to know if the person is the right spouse? I wouldn't say go out and test like this person is trying to pass an exam.
Yeah.
That belittles the spouse, the gentleman or the wife you're potentially interested in marrying, like you're the superior and they have to pass a test. Prayer, investigation, istikhara, those are the key elements I would say you should focus on. And communication, effective, extensive communication during the courtship. Talk, and see how open, how forthcoming is this potential spouse. Are they sincere? And when Maryam said about the test, nobody knows you more than you.
Yeah.
You can cheat on the test. Like people can cheat on lie detector tests and pass it. But if you open yourself between you and Allah and you are sincere as to who you are and you know your shortcomings, that's the place to start.
Yeah. Excellent. And then another question, how do you keep the love going? It takes a lot of work. I mean, you just literally have to fight to make your marriage work. You have to consistently deposit into the emotional bank account. And you can just go on YouTube and look for emotional bank accounts. Stephen Covey explains it very, very well. Short of time, otherwise I'd go deeper into that. And then speak your spouse's love language. If you can find the book 5 Love Languages by Gary, what is it? Anyway, 5 Love Languages. You'll find it. Even the YouTube version is so simple because you find so many different speakers breaking it down. I find that to be of tremendous benefit. Then Anthony Robbins, who wrote this book about 6 human needs. Understand it, because wallahi, those things will help build your relationship, and you learn about depositing in the emotional bank account, feeding your spouse's spirit, making them feel they matter, that they're important, and you bring their fantasies to life. If you want the fire to burn steadily or the embers never to die, you have to consistently be doing all these things. So marriage is full-time work.
You're constantly reinventing yourself and the relationship.
Exactly.
You know,
Don't get stagnant. It's a recipe for disaster.
People play hide and seek. People scare their husbands and you know, make the husband make awful sounds out of fear, and then they just not to scare the person, but the person can scare.
Who are we talking about here? I don't know who
Scare
he's
you.
talking about.
But here's a question, Maryam. Here's a question for those who are married and there's poor communication.
Yeah.
How would you say the wife can improve communication between her and her husband?
Okay, the good thing is, again, due to time, we can't go through everything, but you can, during effective communication, do research on this. Go on YouTube. I love YouTube because it's like the best school in the world. Go on Google and do that. You'll find others have been there and done that and have experienced the same thing. How do you help your spouse? You have to try various methods to see which method will work for them. For me, at the beginning, I sat down, I said, you know, tell me the things you don't like about me, because it's like I'm shooting straight from the hip. Tell me my problems. Alhamdulillah, it worked. He told me. But again, if you're having somebody who's more of an introvert who prefers to shut down rude, maybe you can write a letter to them, because we did that as well. I would write to him and he would generally call me and sit me down, and he responds to whatever it is I've written. Other times he would write back, and it just kept evolving. But you have to try various means. That's why I say you have to study effective communication, because you have to try different things. What works for Saeed and I may not work for you. I told a friend once who was having issues to write a letter to her husband because the issues were just too many. Well, like, he carried this letter and showed all his friends, and it just became like a joke, you know, and it backfired in the face. You need to know that, know your spouse well and know what they want to do. Is it possible to fall out of love? Yes, it so is.
It is.
If you're not doing the work, you will fall out of love. And so if you get married for the right reasons, you will be in love. You're going in with love, and you'll be able to sustain it, inshallah. I know my husband and I fell out of love soon after we got married because, like he said, things to do with pride and ego came in to interfere, and stubbornness. We were both extremely stubborn, rigid, not flexible, and those are all recipes for disaster, which I'll be sharing with you in the course. How should I relate with my spouse? Should I trust him fully, reveal everything, or follow the Hausa culture and only show him my likable parts? First of all, that Allah, marry the right person from the onset. Marry someone who you can be yourself around. That's what marriage is supposed to be. You should be an open book. Somebody who you can tell your deepest secrets and your biggest fears. The peace of mind you have from having that confidant, your companion, your lover, like a big brother, your friend, your best friend. Who knows you better than anybody else in the world, it just makes coming home feel like you're coming to a sanctuary. You get that solace, that peace, that comfort. So definitely do not follow anything to do with culture that's detrimental to your happiness. If you're not transparent and open and truthful, unfortunately, you're looking for trouble in a relationship.
Among the duties of a husband to his wife and vice versa is to be kind, is to love, and to respect. Once those three qualities are in place in any marriage, there will be no reason to pretend, to hide, and not tell the truth. Because as long as there's that kindness, whatever it is, the spouse will be kind to you, the spouse will love you, and the spouse will respect you. Part of the problem is when we don't follow the guidelines given to us in the Quran about marriage, and we don't look at the life of Rasulullah, and we follow culture instead. That's where most of our problems begin. So let's be careful.
Yes. How do you keep the spark alive? In fact, it's 3 questions. How do you keep the spark alive? How do you find common ground? How do you know when to leave? Excellent questions. How do you keep the spark alive? Similar to the one of, deposit and so on. Like my husband and I, like throughout the day, we just keep hugging. Even now during Ramadan, he may come into the room, see me doing something, and he greets me, and he wants to leave, and I was like, you didn't give me a hug. And you know, we are very physical and we are very verbal. We express instantly. So we continue to talk and you know, surprise each other. You know,
before lockdown,
things.
We will talk 3 times a day. Before
Minimum.
lockdown or more.
Yeah, now we're at home.
You know, every 2-3 hours we contact each other. How are you doing? How's your day? How are things going? If she wants to vent, she vents. If I want to vent, I vent. And sometimes say, okay, we will take care of that when we get home.
Yeah.
But we're constantly in touch.
Yeah.
We want to know how the other person is doing, what kind of support we can give each other.
If you want to keep the spark alive, make your spouse know that they are extremely important to you, that they are high up on your list, not they get the leftover of your love after you've shared it out.
Not after your family,
Exactly.
your friends, and so on and so
or your work.
No.
Yes. Then how do you find common ground? For me, I was blessed that my husband was able to elevate me to where he was so that we would have something in common. He lived in the States. I think by the time we came back to Nigeria, he'd been there for about 22 years. But he brought me there because he had been there for at least 12 years.
Yeah, we had 11 years. By the time we got married, 12.
Yeah. So he wanted me to have an idea of what he's already used to, and his humor, because he was used to American humor and I was used to British humor, and they're not funny either. But he needed me to be on the same page with him, and alhamdulillah, he was able to bring me there. And I also took an interest when I realized how important getting this marriage thing right is. I decided to have more in common with him. Make sure that your spouse's number one hobby involves you, even if you're going to be captain of the supporters club. But like, you know, he loves watching sports and playing things like tennis. So we started playing tennis together. He taught me how to play, and I was a very good player. I beat him very, very well. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, we go on walks together, you know, because he loves to stay fit. He loves to watch what he eats. And then he watches football, baseball, the whole works, basketball, and I join him. And I asked for the rules, and I became the biggest super fan, in fact, than any of them in this house. So those are all the little things. And then the books he likes to read, I started to take an interest, and he did with mine. So that's how you find common ground. You better know what your spouse enjoys doing, and then grow together.
Be sure you grow.
Let there not be this intellectual gap between the two of you. It's a recipe for disaster, because you're not going to have anything to talk about. So like my husband says, he comes home because he knows his buddy is waiting for him. He doesn't need to go out to chat with people about world affairs, politics, any current affairs or intellectual issues. It's like it's a one-stop shop, and that's what you want to aim towards. And then how do you know when to leave? Sensitive one. I would say when you feel small, when you feel you're being broken, when you're losing your identity, when you're losing your self-worth, when you're feeling contempt, resentment, where there is the room is the environment is toxic or getting dangerous. Don't lose yourself. I can say you're not supposed to suffer in marriage. So make sure you make the right choice. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, it's better to be alone than to be in bad company, and it's better to be in good company than to be alone. So if being alone is better for you, go ahead, and Allah will be with you, and be brave. Don't stay because of the children. You are damaging them, and do istihara before you choose to leave. It takes, and you would have exhausted all options, intervention, asking others. You have to do all those things before you decide. But don't lose yourself and your worth or your identity, be broken or physically abused, psychologically abused, and so on in the relationship. How do you handle non-emotional partners? I think that's similar to, first you should have known that during courtship. If you don't see the good signs, yeah, you will know. Exactly. You will know during courtship, and that's why don't ignore those things that are important to you. Otherwise, you're just going to be dealing with damage control, and sometimes you just can't change a person. So try and talk. Be creative in the ways. Again, write if you need to say, you know, this person, they're very emotional. You know, how do you get them out of that? Try various means. And then what are the main things to consider before marriage? And do looks matter? If you are not attracted, do you grow to love them? Beautiful question, similar to the question you had said you had seen.
Allah first in everything. Allah first in everything. Then spirituality, the person, the between them and Allah, and then the character, because those ones are what build the character. And what Maryam and I were talking about, we're fortunate we found each other physically attractive. I remember her father saying in Hausa, I would say exactly what he said in Hausa. So there better be something deeper than just a looks. And that is what got us on this train to character is good. You conform someone's character.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes really it's more important than the looks.
Yeah.
It's more important than the looks. A kind, loving, respectful, compassionate, understanding man or woman who would be supportive no matter what.
You grow to love them, and you don't see the exterior.
And all you see is the beauty of the heart, of the character of the person.
Yeah.
So it can go both ways. If the looks are what you're after, that's dangerous, to be very honest.
It can fade.
Particularly for men who are interested in beautiful women, the new ones are born prettier every single day. So the heart better be the kind you fall in love with.
Yeah.
Maryam is a very kind-hearted, loving, considerate person, a human being that's just beautiful inside. And the other things are a plus, but that's the discovery, and it started during courtship, because I come from a background, prominent name, and I told Maryam, I don't have the money. Someone has the money. I'm a poor, struggling student. And in the initial stages of the courtship, I told her if she wanted to go for someone, because I wasn't the only suitor, there were others healthier than I was, and who were courting her. And I said, I know this. If that's your interest, please feel free to go. And she said no. She wanted me. Now, for someone who had the opportunity and decided to go with this poor guy, and married him, I felt I owe her what I can possibly do to raise her as high as I possibly can. And that was a commitment I made. But then when you look at the duties and responsibilities also, you're like, it falls right in line with Allah, what Allah said I should do, and what Rasulullah did. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did with his family.
Yeah. So do looks matter? Yes, chemistry is important.
Chemistry,
that you are attracted to the person. Yeah. You don't want to marry someone you're disgusted to look at or lie down next to, obviously. So yes, to an extent it is, but like he said, the looks will fade. I know my parents were married for 50 years. My mom passed in the 50th year of marriage. And my dad could not see the wrinkles and, age having crept in and all the flaws that physically you would see. His sweet Aisha was just always there, and that was what he saw till the very end. So yes, you grow to love someone if you choose to ignore the exterior, but they have such a beautiful person. Yeah, exactly. And then how do you balance marriage with profession? This is all premarital. Talk about it. And then for you, better know your marriage is priority, not your career. It is your priority. I'm not saying don't work. Please go ahead and do so and go far. But don't sacrifice your loved ones or the marriage. Don't sacrifice your marriage or your children because of your job. So giving birth to kids is not compulsory. Once you bring them into this world, they have rights. And so you have obligations to them, and you better fulfill them because you're going to answer to Allah for it.
Both of you came together to create those kids.
Both
of you have to have an understanding of caring for those kids. The kids don't come before the husband or the husband before the kids.
Exactly.
Because the husband and wife together decided to have the kids. So that issue of who gets attention, is it the kids or the husband, should never ever
Some husbands get jealous when the wife has babies because she ignores him. Don't ever sacrifice that. Keep that relationship going and maintain the bond between the two of you. And then how do you make your spouse your best friend? You chat, you talk, you joke, you talk, you play, you
raise.
talk.
Even though some people cheat when you raise, they'll say one, okay, after the count of three, one, and they've taken off. You're like, and you're standing there before 2, 3. And
I thought you are my garment. You're supposed to cover my asiris.
That one is public.
All right. So yeah, just have fun. Marriage is really a lot of fun. Enjoy it. It's such a pleasure if it's working right. But it takes work to get there. And then what are the most rewarding and prohibited in marriage? The most rewarding is peace tranquility, fulfillment, growth, harmony, balance. Everything just seems so aligned. And then they prohibited, well, let's say prohibited in intimacy, no anal sex, that one is haram. No intercourse when your spouse is having her period. But it doesn't mean you're decommissioned because you have your period. Remember, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that there was a story, a hadith where he mentioned that his spouse covered, Nana Aisha covered with a loincloth, a midsection, and they could still be intimate. So don't decommission yourself because they still have needs.
Can I clear something very quick? Yeah, no boyfriend, girlfriend in Islam. We courted for 4 years. I was in the States, 3 years. 3 years. Yeah. I was in the States, she was in Nigeria. We were not seeing each other for 3 years. A lot of correspondence, a lot of letters. And it was in the second year or third year that she actually called. And the first time she called was to tell me my sister, who was pregnant, had a false alarm. She went to the hospital, didn't have a baby. That was the first time we communicated. A lot of the letters were actually about telling each other about ourselves, what our likes and dislikes, and we didn't see each other till a year before we got married, and that was when she was telling you it was controlled, it was chaperoned, we were not left alone, and that was like for just 3 months. Then I left again, left the country, only to come back about 9 months later, and we got then we got married. So it wasn't, and the letters, there was nothing X-rated. Anybody could read them. Yeah. We were just discussing our dreams and aspirations of our life, and my challenges, issues I had to deal with, and so on and so forth. And I was asking questions, and I told her she was free to ask me whatever questions she felt like asking. I was obligated to give her an answer.
Yeah, so no dating in Islam. Don't use that word because it's a Western terminology we've imported.
Yes.
In the West, dating means you're sleeping with someone. So make sure you use the right context, right language. It's courting in Islam. That's halal. And don't let the devil be the third in the row. How do I make married life interesting? I feel it might get tiring. It won't get tiring if you continue to work. And it's work.
Be creative.
Yes.
Be creative, surprises, just know your
spontaneous sometimes.
Know your spot.
Like my husband and I would go when our kids were young, we'd dump them with my mom and we'd go to a hotel here where we live in Mina. We just leave the house and go, and it's fun. Sometimes we just go off to Abuja, or we travel somewhere where it's just the two of us. But write notes, surprise each other, help each other do things that are unexpected, nice things, sweet things. Sometimes I prepare something I know he really loves, and he's like, "Oh, Maryam," that's how he does.
Before Ramadan and the lockdown, Maryam likes suya of liver, fresh suya of liver, and I would book at around noon to 1 p.m. That's when they start the roasting. It's fresh. It's the freshest. I just go there, I buy that, I come by the office, and that's all I do. I drop it, and I just go
back. Excuse me, okay. How can, and then another thing is be adventurous in the bedroom. If you want to keep the spice going, you need to have variety. You need to learn different tricks. You need to be creative. Do not let boredom set in. Have variety, no monotony, no routines. So it makes it more interesting.
And discuss it.
What do you like.
Adults is in the privacy of your room, you're alone. Talk about it. Have discussions about it. Part of the requirements of both husbands and wives is to make sure each partner is satisfied in the department of intimacy.
Yeah.
It's an obligation.
Both.
It's not just
satisfied.
Both.
Yeah, and so, for men, it's so easy for them.
2 to 5 minutes is the
average.
They're done.
And they will
women is about 8 to 20 minutes.
Yes.
And even in Islam, scholars talk about foreplay. It's important that you do that. You have foreplay because of that nature that we know of ourselves. So there's nothing to be shy about in this department. You talk about it. Someone said something very important about being afraid because of experiences growing at home, the kind of parents they had who are not caring. The experience that we have, human beings being the sum of those experiences, we start identifying right away, either we don't want that kind of a wife or we don't want this kind of a husband.
Yeah.
Because either parent is one or the other. And I'm not saying condemn parents. Parents are not perfect. But when they make mistakes, we go before Allah and ask Allah to forgive them for their shortcomings. Yeah. In addition to that, we ask Allah to guide us not to be the same way so that our children do not feel the same way we feel towards our parents. Yeah. It's very important that that experience, you use it to know what to avoid or what not to do. So please do keep that in mind.
And the last two questions here. How can I control my mouth and anger and be tactful? Girl, I hear you, because I had a big mouth. I still do, but I had to learn to be tactful. I had to, because of for the sake of the relationship. I'm sure many of you have heard me refer to my mouth as my greatest weapon of mass destruction. Like, this is one intercontinental ballistic missile. I used it very well. You need to know your weaknesses, because that's what this is. And then you fight. You watch your utterances. You think, what I'm about to say, will it help or ruin the relationship? Make sure you address those kind of issues with yourself. It's part of the demons you need to deal with and kill before you go into the relationship. Then, how to calm my husband when he is angry. Now, this man sitting here, I call him silent killer under the radar, because he's a ticking time bomb. You look at him now, we're all smiling now. He then explodes. Alhamdulillah, again, it's one of the things he knows is a weakness and has worked on. But I know, for me, how to calm him down is to make sure I don't aggravate things. I don't make things worse. So making sure I try my best through effective communication, because it's one of the skills I learned. I sometimes say, I'm so sorry you're upset. You see, I'm not saying I'm sorry I did anything wrong. I didn't, he did. He's always the one doing things wrong.
You know, we talked about effective communication, right? That's a bad communication. That's
Let me finish. Don't interrupt me. Wait, I was talking. So make sure you watch what you say so you don't make him angrier. Watch your body language so you don't give the wrong message that irritates him even more. And then try and bring soft words to calm him down. Like, I'm sorry, like, it's just a word that seems to put out the fire. So be good at using those words. I'm sorry you're upset. I can see you're angry. And if you know you're part of it, say, I would be angry too if someone did that to me. Or I'm so sorry I hurt your feelings. Those are all things that hopefully will calm him down. Sometimes you just need to take time out and give him space. And so let him go and cool down. When you know you've given him enough time, you go back again. Before then, maybe you can slip a note under the door.
Oh, now with the phone, you can.
Now with the phone, you can send him a message, a voice note, or record yourself making an apology. But learn effective apology during your effective communication training. It will help tremendously. What else did you have?
Very quickly about courtship using video calls. Still, the same guidelines apply when you do that. The key thing is let people know you're having this conversation. Be properly dressed.
Yeah.
Cover yourself accordingly. Don't delve into areas that you know between you and Allah is wrong, whether the man or the woman. No showing off body parts or anything like that.
You can do that afterwards.
If you get married, that's between the two of you. Before, don't you remember, you want Allah's barakah.
Exactly.
You want Allah's blessing in your union. Start it off on the right foot. Yeah. No matter the pressure, no matter the influence, start it off on the right foot.
So, admin, I think we've come to the end of this. We could not exhaust all the questions actually, but I would love, since you have an audience, new questions would have come up from the talk. So why don't we go straight into that, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Yes, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
Oh, okay. You've answered most of the questions that were sent in the chat section, but Zainab has some private questions that were sent to her, so she's just going to read them out now.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have some questions from the private, and so we'll just go through some of them. So the first one is, can you say I can't be with this person because of his religious background? He might be a Muslim, but not a practicing one.
That's a very important question, and it's a serious one. According to the teachings of Islam, if a born Muslim or even a revert doesn't pray 3 days straight, he's effectively a non-Muslim. And that's an insight to the kind of life you're going to have. That union is going to be done under the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with Allah as a witness.
Yeah.
So again, it's Allah first for both of you. If that is missing right off the bat, I would say it's a non-starter.
Yeah.
It's a non-starter.
Exactly.
Okay. The second one is, if upon introspection and self-reflection, one realizes they need to work on themselves and unresolved issues, would you advise them to turn down whoever comes their way till they are all right, or they can be in courtship despite their issues?
To be honest with you, don't get into that marriage if you've not resolved your issues. Let the person know. I was fortunate. I had 3 years, and I worked on that to address many of my unresolved issues. I told Maryam I have quite a few skeletons in my cupboard that I needed to clean out. And you can imagine, in spite of having 3 years, there were other issues that I unfortunately did not know I had problems with. Those came out after the nikah, after we got married. So, but the fact that I started the process helped me in addressing the second round of going deep in myself and resolving those issues. And some of those issues had to do with my experiences growing up in the polygamy. So it's important you do not carry baggage into the marriage. But most importantly, if you're blessed with a partner that understands, they help you overcome those issues, as opposed to letting it be a barrier to a peaceful coexistence. So it's very, very important. And let the person know why you're delaying things. It's not their fault, it's you that need to work on yourself.
Yeah.
So let them be fully in the picture.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have another one that says, how does one approach the sensitive matter of intimacy premaritally to ensure that there aren't any issues? Examples, erectile dysfunctions or other known issues.
That's a tough one. It's sensitive, it's embarrassing, it's awkward.
When you know that part of your responsibility and duty as a man is to fulfill the intimacy needs of your spouse, there is no reason to be embarrassed, because not meeting those obligations will be an offense before God.
Yeah.
So don't trick a woman into marrying you when you don't have the ability to satisfy her and meet her needs as a woman.
Yeah.
So it's important for the man to come clean in that particular case and say, I have this challenge. Would you mind? Yeah. And this is what I'm doing to address it. Either I'm seeing a therapist or I'm seeing a doctor and so on. Some of the issues of erectile dysfunction can come from sexual abuse, when the man is sexually abused.
That's one, and also pornography.
Pornography, excessive
pornography, excessive masturbation
can cause insensitivity, where the only way they can get excited is if they watch.
Yeah, so, but I think another thing to add is, you as the woman during the courtship can ask, like, okay, I know this is a sensitive issue of intimacy. Is there anything I need to know before we get married that has to do with the bedroom? You know, just, is there something you want to tell me? Because by asking in that way, of course, you're maintaining dignity. You're not getting graphic.
You're not going X-rated.
You're not getting X-rated. you've asked.
Yes.
If they are not truthful to you, it's now an issue that you can now make a big deal out of because they owed you that. So I think it's good as a woman, and that's a beautiful question. I'm glad you asked it. Don't forget that question. It's a good one. Yeah. Next question.
How do we make sure that we are not nitpicking, and how do we prioritize non-negotiables and small flaws that can be worked on, since ultimately none of us are perfect?
First and foremost, understand the rights and responsibilities of marriage, but the criteria we gave you about connection with Allah, Allah being first, about spirituality, and then investigation. You are inquiring, you are asking questions. You have people investigate the potential spouse to be whether male or female. Then you embark on istihara. If everything comes out positive, alhamdulillah, then you know between you and Allah, you've done your best, you've done what Allah asked you to do, what Rasulullah asked you to do. So about the nitpicking one, there are some aspects that someone could improve upon, especially if the spouse to be is honest to tell you, I have these challenges. I am aware of them, I'm working on them, I'm praying about them. I want you to join me in praying for me to help Allah to guide me overcome them.
Yeah.
A lot of sincerity that goes into these discussions honestly helps a long way, because you see, what you love about the person is they were not deceitful about it. They were honest about it to you, and they did not hide it. They didn't pretend to be something they are not. They acknowledge what they are, and they ask you to join them in this journey to discover the best versions of themselves.
Yes, and I think this issue to do with nitpicking as well. This thing about making sure you have realistic expectations, but at the same time, what will you not compromise? Because if you say prayer is one, then definitely don't mess with that one. Say, no, if this person doesn't pray, is non-negotiable. They're not truthful. Issues to do with fidelity. How will you know? Somebody just asked, okay, what if they have a lot of female friends? How do you trust? It's part of the code of conduct. You need to make sure before the marriage you discuss certain things that are rules for your marriage that you will both observe loyally. And you can just go on my YouTube channel, you'll see the video on code of conduct, or even on my Instagram page. There's a very short one, and it just lists the ones we have that works for us, and that's at Maryam Lemu Official. However, you can agree, whichever one works for you. Obviously, this is what works for my husband and I, but you can discuss this ahead of time and come up with an agreement. And then don't be blind. Open your eyes, look for signs if you have any concerns, because you could be totally delusional thinking they are observing it, whereas there is infidelity going on. So don't just assume. Try and make sure you both establish trust and you earn the trust for each other. That is such an important one. Yes, next question, please.
Okay. How do you go about unlearning mistakes made by your parents, not letting that be mirrored into your own marriage, and also dealing with trauma, so childhood trauma or relationship trauma?
I know I always say in my lecture, try not to replicate what you saw in your home that was not pleasant. So becoming aware, what didn't I like, is important. How did my mother look? Or even my father, because sometimes it's the fathers that get abused. I have somebody very close to me. They've all passed away now. The father was the one who was being verbally abused by the wife. So this is a reality. But remember, going backwards, what didn't you like? What did you see that was not pleasant? What did you see that you definitely don't want in your relationship? Become aware of it. That's why that self-awareness is important, and that introspect. Go deep inside, because these are the skeletons that Said is referring to that could come back and haunt you. Sometimes you're oblivious. You don't realize. When we counsel couples, many times we ask the spouse that has told us, how is the relationship between their mother and their father?
Yeah.
And by the time we go down that road, they now do have an aha moment where they realize
difference among the man and the woman. We very possibly would want to, I mean, very likely will inherit some of their characteristics, good and bad. And when some of those start to rear their ugly heads in a marriage, we have to take a step back and say, where is this coming from? And once you recognize, then you think about those who are on the receiving end of that bad behavior. Were they happy about it? So here you are a product. You didn't make yourself. You don't go condemning your parents because they are like that and they gave it to you. That's why I said earlier, I said you pray to Allah to forgive them for their shortcomings, and you pray to Allah to help you overcome those same characteristics that you very likely have inherited. So you are working on yourself to overcome those shortcomings. And right off the bat, Allah did say He will try us. That is one of your trials, to overcome this bad habit or this bad characteristic. Now, the issue to do with trauma, whether male or female, whether it is emotional, physical, or sexual abuse, it is to recognize that you are a victim.
Not your fault.
It's not your fault. It does not make you any less of a human being because you went through that. And it's important, this is where spousal selection is so critical, that you marry someone who's compassionate, empathetic, that would help you heal. And will help you give you back your self-esteem and self-confidence and sense of self-worth.
Absolutely.
So these issues are very, very important. If you go into the wrong one, they could be your road to just devastation, despair, you know, and so many terrible things. So it's important right off the bat, you have these discussions with potential spouses. They recognize you're having some of these challenges, and how they react right away to you and whatever has happened to you is a very, very strong clue on whether to go ahead or really to reconsider.
Okay, we'll just take two more quickly. How do you balance good character and intellectual compatibility? For instance, you meet someone with good character, but you are intellectually not on the same page.
It's so important that you balance both. Definitely. That intellectual gap is a problem. You're not going to have much to talk about. And that compatibility is important, that you have something you're both on the same page with. And then good character is critical.
Good character is number one. I mean, I say number two after connectivity with Allah, relationship
exactly.
with Allah.
Spirituality first. But good character.
Character is very, very
because
important.
It guides them and, you know, helps them do the right thing by you.
The foundation is solid.
Exactly.
You don't have concerns there.
Yeah, but you
intellectually
grow old together, have
it's
so
a
much
discussion. You have to talk about. You have to discuss that. It's important. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting in the same room,
watching your
with
phone,
nothing
to
discuss. And that, unfortunately, is dangerous because it opens the door for shaitan, and you start looking for alternatives of meeting or satisfying that need, that intellectual need. So it's very, very important. You do not ignore that and you discuss it. And especially, it's important to address that during courtship. It's very, very critical.
Okay, and the last one. We have a lot more questions, but due to time, sorry. Okay, so with couples that are getting married later, close to their 30s, and don't have the privilege of waiting too long before they have children, what do you recommend?
I still recommend have kids when the time is right, when you know you've got your act together, because parenting is for life. It doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter what age you started. Your kids are going to grow up and you have a responsibility to fulfill, obligations you have to fulfill, because you feel your biological clock is ticking and so on. Allah is the ultimate provider, and you could be young and want to have kids and it doesn't come at that time. But I think making sure you are deliberate in your in parenting, being a deliberate parent is so critical. So if you want to do your homework way earlier and you've gone into how do I want to raise my children? What method are we going to apply when it comes to discipline? What about expressions of love? Are we going to be on the same page? Because you could have one doing one thing, the other one is undermining the efforts, which causes confusion amongst the kids, and then you have factions amongst the kids because they know this one is the soft one, this one is the hardliner or the disciplinarian. You both have to be on the same page. Like for kids, one thing they know is if they do something that I see, their father will know. I don't believe in keeping secrets where later he gets to find out, or they've gone too far off the track, and that's when I involve him and say, this is what's happening. He's not going to find it funny. So if you can, because you are much older, you're more mature, and you've discussed this and have agreed with your spouse, this is what you're going to do together, then you should be ready to go straight into having children. But don't forget, if you get married late, you need time to adjust to each other as well. It's different from courtship because all the masks are off at that time. So be sensible in how you do it, but be conscious and deliberate.
I would just venture to assume that getting married that late, one would have had a lot of introspection.
Exactly.
One would have had a lot of thoughts on how they want things to be done and so on and so forth, and how they intend to relate with each other as husband and wife, and how they intend to come together and partner and to have children and raise the children in a particular way. So the courtship of that particular couple and the discussions would be extremely intense to make sure that these things are covered, because they don't have the luxury of time, so to speak. They want to get in, get married, and start a family right away. So I would assume during that courtship, these issues, perhaps on a daily basis, you'll cover one critical issue every day and come to terms. And basically what you're having with each other, this late along in life when you get married, you're having kind of a contract between the two of you that you discuss and you agree. Even if it means having a template, you write it down and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do. When the marriage comes and you have some dispute, you refer back to that conversation you had and that agreement you entered into on how to be married, how to do this, do that, do this, and so on and so forth. So have an honest, deep, intense discussions, because again, time is not on your side. May Allah make it easy for you.
Amin. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for taking your time out today to be with us. We have learned so much, and we ask that Allah blesses you, your knowledge, your marriage, and grants us all Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah.
Anyway, I think we are done because we've lost signal with the admin. Are you still there?
Yes, we are done, alhamdulillah. Thank you very much.
Really a pleasure.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
And love to my daughter, Fatima Manga. Ma'asalam. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for joining. The recording will be available, inshallah, on YouTube, and we'll make that available. Tomorrow we have another talk, inshallah. It's feminism and Islam, question and answer session. So please get your questions ready, and we'll share the link very soon. Thank you very much.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you.